Okay, good stuff. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, everybody. Hi. We're joined today by Spring Integration Lead Artem Bilan. Hi, how you doing, my friend?
Hello, my friend. All good. Thank you.
I'm so excited. First of all, have you upgraded your Java yet? Like Java 20? Are you already using Java 20 on your machine?
No, we cannot do that yet because Java 17 is still baseline, until probably Spring Boot 3.2.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, but okay, good. Well, I've upgraded on my local machine because I can use Java 20. But you, as a developer working on the frameworks all the time, you have to comply with Java 17. Uh,
Sure.
but I looked
Yeah,
at
we will do that. Yeah,
sorry,
probably we will wait until Java
21.
21st, 21,
Yeah,
yeah.
that'll be fun.
And when we will have already Project Loom merged, right, with virtual thread support.
It's gonna be so good.
It's going to be pretty exciting subject for all of us.
They released Java 20 this morning though, and
Yeah,
I'm looking at SDK Manager, and I don't see the new Java 20 yet. And I'm like, come on! I want I know it'll be there soon, and then I want the GraalVM version. I want Java 20 GraalVM, and I see let's see, R17, R19. I don't see an R20 in there either for GraalVM.
you
So
can ask them. Yeah, that's probably also going to be exciting.
yeah, it's going to take a few minutes. Okay, well, anyway, yeah, Java 20 is here. I'm so excited about that. Right now, you and I live in an amazing time. We are people working on. Oh, hey, people are joining us. Good morning, everybody. Hello, hi, hello, good morning. Hi.
Oh,
Yes, I should just say a good morning. Let me see here. Can I do that from here? Good morning.
somewhere it is. Good evening.
Yeah, we have amazing people who join us from all around the world.
Yeah.
In a given live stream, I'll have
Yeah. Thank you for making this, Josh. Yeah, that's really great. You joining people around the world, this or other one. Yeah, that's cool.
it's great for me. I feel bad for the people watching, but for me, it's been great. We get people from look, there's people from almost time for the first session. That's right, the Java 20 thing is happening soon. Oh, okay, well, you can. I don't blame you if you want to go watch that. That's fine, but this will be on YouTube. But if you have questions, my friends, now's the time to ask. We have Spring Integration Lead Artem Bilan. Now, if you were just joining, we've been doing Let's Code on Spring Integration for last two episodes, right? On Friday and then yesterday we did some.
You already released it too. Oh, okay, sorry, man, I missed it.
Oh yeah, that was yesterday. It's okay.
Yes.
I took some of the great changes that you gave me, some of the feedback, and we improved our code.
Did it work?
Well, I got rid of the filter, and then the gateway worked. I didn't specify a default timeout, but we also covered splitters and aggregators. We covered wiretaps. I think we got most of the big
essential
patterns.
You speak my language.
We also covered service, the annotations, not the integration flow. Most of it is integration flow, right? But we also looked at service activator and the component model there for that.
Good alternative. Yeah.
So we haven't really covered any of the adapters or any of the gateways, but we have covered most of the core patterns: channels, adapters, filters, transformers, handlers or service activators or whatever we call them.
The core, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, all the fun stuff.
Whatever is explained in this book.
Yes. Which I was looking at that book because we've been talking about it. That book is Enterprise Integration Patterns. We talked about that. It's like the manual for Spring Integration.
Bible, my table Bible,
Right. Right, exactly. And that book, I was looking at it recently on Amazon because I have the thick book, but I don't have it here because I like 12 years ago, 11 years ago, I moved to San Francisco, and in San Francisco, it's there's no space, right? So and before that, before in 2012, I got divorced, and so
Okay.
I took all of my DVDs and music and all that other stuff. Anything that she wanted, she can keep. I kept a few books, but the books, I don't have space in San Francisco, so I put them in storage. So I don't have any physical media anymore for the last 11 years. I stream, I buy online, even video games. I don't have disc cartridges, anything like
No,
that,
they
right?
don't.
And so I was looking, that book is now available on Kindle, Enterprise Integration Patterns, which I didn't know. Before I had to buy the physical. I didn't think you could buy it online, but it's digital now. So I'm thinking about buying it again. It's still very expensive, but it's a good book. Very good book.
Yep, it is. It is perfect book. Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about you for a minute, just because I want to make sure people are aware of what's happening here. You're Artem. You're we had Oleg on the show a few weeks ago, and he was telling me about how telling us about how you came to the team, right? And I love that.
Thank you.
So how exactly you were contributing outside? You were not a member of the Spring team at first, right?
No, it was not. No. Yeah, outside contributor, that was kind of those days when Spring Source has moved its repository to GitHub. So all the source code became available and really open source. And
like
GitHub
2010.
Yes,
or maybe 2011.
Yeah. And together with Chris Beams, Oleg, and Mark Fisher, we realized how to make the outside contribution from whatever person around the world. So it's GitHub just made that very, very easy for all of us. And you see those code, it is colored, and you feel free to open GitHub issue, and then pull request to fix, and that's it. That was very simple flow for contribution,
We had I wish Chris Beams was here to answer this. Do you remember we had in the beginning a Git? It wasn't GitLab. This is before GitLab. It was a Gitium or Git. We had a thing that we installed for like a year, and it was Git, but it was our own hosted Git, and I think at some point we moved.
Yes, that's probably before me,
Yeah. At some point we moved to GitHub, and you're right. That makes all the difference, right? Because we were open source already, but and people, Spring was very popular even 12 years ago. But I mean, GitHub, it's a flood.
I would say even 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I started looking to Spring like 2007, back in my work.
Nice. Right around Spring Integration's birth.
Was that just sorry?
Around the same time as Spring Integration was born.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I probably tried the version 1.0 something like that, just because I needed it back in my work. Some functionality to pull files from FTP, to parse them, and then store to database. And I realized that there is something like SFTP inbound channel adapter implementation in Spring. So that was my first meet with Spring integration.
Right. Oh, so good.
And I was very excited. Then I found this book from Gregor Hope, and it was very, very mind-blowing messaging, asynchronous communication, and I decided to dedicate my career to messaging as it is.
Hello, Daniel. Daniel says hello. Good morning, afternoon, good evening. Messaging, I think 10, 15 years ago, messaging was a very complicated way to build systems, right? And people understood the value of it, but they didn't necessarily have the need for it, right? Because they thought that only serious enterprise. I remember this thinking like, oh, if I want to do messaging, suddenly I'm now talking about not just some open source thing that's easy to run. I'm talking about I need to buy a very heavy message queue, and I need to talk to IBM and buy,
Yes,
get
IBM.
lots of consultants and
That's what we did. Yeah.
or web methods or typical. It used to be very scary to like bring in messaging into your system.
Yeah.
And
Especially with EGB, right? We configured
Yeah.
everything. Even without annotation, that was huge XMLs to be able to configure message-driven.
Yeah. Very painful. And
even
so I
bits.
understood why that stuff was needed, but I tried to avoid it. It just seemed very like complicated, and if I could avoid it, I would. And now, oh, look at this. Sanjeev has been using Spring integration since 2007. That's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, we love people who are using the technologies, with us the entire time. But then I think came open source messaging. So active MQ was a very big deal for me, right? Because it was open source and I could do real messaging, and then Spring also. Spring gave me I didn't have to use an application server. Suddenly it was like, well, now I can deploy this just like I can deploy a Postgres. It's free, open source. I could build a real system, with messaging in it. And then comes Spring integration. Spring integration now makes it easy to think about messaging. It's not lots of like transactions and JMS specific stuff. I can just write messaging code, very generic code in terms of this pipelines model. And now here we are, well, what did we just say? 2007. So almost 16 years later. And microservices are all small. We have services now, right? Before you had monoliths. So messaging was, again, very, very rare. If you had to do it, you had some legacy integration scenario. But now, today, why wouldn't you do messaging first? Like RPC or messaging. It's just been amazing to see Spring integration become more valuable, more interesting, over the years.
Yeah, that's right. That's I have another book to show.
Interesting.
Yeah, Chris Richardson wrote this book, Microservices Patterns, right? How to build our distributed systems with microservices. And one of the concepts he explains is really messaging.
Yeah, messaging first.
Currently, these days, I'm kind of thinking how to improve Spring integration with this microservices concept and make it much easier for end users to understand and probably even implement some microservices patterns using enterprise integration patterns, and of course with Spring integration as a tool to do
right. I think it fits very nicely because with Spring integration, if you're trying to do modern service to modern service communication, it's the same thing as if you're trying to do modern service to legacy, right? The programming, the way you think about code is exactly the same. And so it's very simplifying, it's consistent. That's the right word, consistent.
Yeah, and the point is, Josh, that Spring integration is not just about messaging. As you mentioned it already, channel adapters. We have a bunch of channel adapters which are RPC based, like the same simple HTTP inbound channel adapter. It receives HTTP request, so you have simple RPC implementation over HTTP, even if it is messaging underneath with Spring integration.
Right, that's true.
Insane.
It's the same programming model. So you think about your code with this pipes and filters style, and now you can handle any problem, RPC or asynchronous messaging or file transfer or whatever, right?
Oh, file transfer, you say. I wrote somewhere probably, Gregory Hope wrote that in the book, that shared database and file transferring is kind of anti-pattern in integration by itself. But still, there are some use cases where we just cannot connect service to service, even if we place some messaging broker in between.
Right. 100%. Yeah, he talks about the 4 styles of integration, right? File transfer, messaging, shared database, and RPC, right?
Yeah, that's
Oh, I'm getting some feedback. Okay, that seems better. Fancy new sneakers. What are my sneakers?
sneakers.
Simon is saying I have fancy new.
Probably about Spring IO this May in Barcelona.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
What? Hard. Yeah, I guess. So Sanjeev says there used to be message buses. 100. Yeah, yeah, exactly. These message buses were.
15 years ago. Yeah, we had that, but then we removed it.
Oh,
Not me. Probably Mark Fisher introduced it and removed it back then. Then we decided that message bus by itself doesn't mean to be a component. We
Right.
look at the whole application context of Spring inversion of control context as a message bus.
Yeah, you can publish and consume messages, and there is even an adapt. There's a application event adapter. For
we
Spring
do.
Event.
Yeah.
So you can consume that in the same way.
For example, we can react to some events like refresh scope.
Yep.
When you do Spring Cloud and you want to refresh some properties on the fly, that specific channel adapter can react to that and do some messaging for you for letting refresh.
So that's a great point, actually. There's 2 things there. There's the refresh scope, which is what you just mentioned, which is Spring Cloud has an annotation where you can annotate a bean. It'll create a proxy, and whenever there's an application event of type refresh scope, context refreshed event, or something like that, whenever that event gets published, the beans that are in this proxy get recreated, right?
Sure.
That's part 1. But you can just listen for the event. You don't have to use the annotation.
No.
Right? And then are you the one who did this? I've used the integration context, integration registration or integration context.
Wait.
To programmatically create new integration flows, right?
Integration flow context. Let's call it integration flow context.
That is a great.
That's right. There was an idea how to be able to build flows on the fly when we made already something viable from integration flow DSL as something what is useful for high level application development.
Right.
And there are many questions how to make it kind of to be able to build integration flow on the fly. So that special component in the application context, it helps us to register beans on the fly. And when you don't need it, we remove them.
So you can do it at runtime. You can programmatically destroy a context, an integration flow. And this opens up a lot of opportunities, because now you can have multi-tenant flows, right? You can have 1 flow per user or something like that, which might be very unscalable.
Yes, or the simple one, for example, you have several directories to listen for files, right? And you realize that it's going to be cumbersome to register inbound channel adapter for every single directory.
Right.
You just use it in a cycle on post construct, for example, phase.
Right.
And that's it. And then you listen for all the files from different
directories. That's so brilliant. I use that for listening for RSS feeds. I have many RSS feeds that I want to read from. So when the application starts up, I use that. I create a flow.
Yes.
And one thing that becomes very interesting here, though, is that you start realizing that there are scalability constraints that are obvious now when you can create n+1, when you can create n integration flows. Some things are shared still, right?
Correct.
One of the things that is shared is if you're doing polling, if you have a poller, the scheduler is shared in the Spring Boot application context, right?
It is. Yes, it is shared.
So what are some of the things that people should be aware of there? Like what kind of, like the scheduler is shared. When does that become an issue? Or does it become an issue? Or what can you do about it?
Do not block. Yeah, blocking is a problem.
In the scheduler or like the poller? I mean,
if you use scheduled thread very heavy and the process, what's the noise? The process is blocking somewhere, or you forgot to return reply, or you just don't think that there is going to be some blocking because of no reply. The thread is going, it becomes in the dormant state, and it is not available for any subsequent schedule.
right. So is the default scheduler that Spring Boot creates, does that have enough threads? Like, what do people need to know about that?
Spring Boot is mostly for microservices, right? This is framework to develop microservices, and therefore every single configuration on convention we choose, it's in minimal. Whatever is enough to start your simple microservice. Don't call it microservice and make it monolith, right?
Right.
Therefore, task scheduler pool executor has only one thread, and also default one, and also task executor in Spring Framework by itself also has only one thread in its pool.
Right.
So probably it's enough for most simple use cases when we definitely develop true microservice.
Right.
But if we're going to have several complicated and parallel tasks or scheduled tasks, it's not going to be enough.
So, for example, if I have
Better
multiple
to increase the pool size, right?
Yeah. Okay.
After your first video, I'm realizing that I need to revise something in the framework in Spring integration by itself. And I realized that we have a lot of places where we block. We wait for something indefinitely.
Right.
It's from microservices concept, Chris Peterson's wrote in this book, essentially, that it is good practice when you develop distributed system to not block indefinitely.
Right.
Better to fail with timeout exception than we block it over there and don't understand what is going on. Same, happens exactly with this single task scheduler. I realized that when we use messaging gateway request reply pattern, we do wait for reply on some internal temporary reply channel, and we do wait by default at the moment indefinitely.
Okay.
So when we block the thread and we don't allow anything else to happen, which could give us reply as also pollable source.
Right.
Just because we have only one thread, so nothing else can happen. And right now I revise it, and we're going to have kind of just 1 second wait for reply. It is scheduled operation, and it waits only 1 second, then it goes to the next cycle or let to do some other task, and it will come back eventually for the same operation. So what I'm doing right now, it's going to be in 6.1 version of Spring integration. It's not going to block that single thread in task scheduler pool. Yeah, so we probably won't need to worry about this problem anymore. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. So for people who are joining, in one of the last 2 videos we did, I had an example where I used a messaging gateway. You have an interface, you call a method on the interface, and it automatically kicks off a Spring integration message into a channel. And if you have a return value, if it's not void on the method, if it has a return value, Spring integration will wait for the reply. And in my example, because part of my flow had a filter that would sometimes terminate the flow before a reply was sent.
Yes, that's different story. Yeah, that fixed it already too. We already committed the change for that one.
Right. But so basically what Artem is saying, I think, is he watched me screwing up my code on Friday, and he's making Spring integration better for people like me who are not so smart. That's amazing.
I'm sorry, Josh. Yeah, that's just problem came from the framework, and it is great to have this kind of videos. So you give us great feedback. That's awesome.
Speaking of feedback,
I answered a couple similar questions on Stack Overflow back in days, but definitely I answered how to fix this problem from target configuration. But when I saw your demo, it was pretty fast. You coded everything flows here until it blocks, right?
Oh yeah.
Because no reply from the filter. And I realized that probably it is better to make something by default, which will make your life easier when you code from the scratch without knowing what is going on. So yeah, there are already a couple of fixes committed into project. We're going to release M261 M2 tomorrow. Yeah.
Right. That's amazing. So that's tomorrow. Oh, you heard it. So that's Wednesday.
This week is fully packed with many releases. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for joining us today. I know you're busy. So we have some interesting comments here. Sanjeev is saying that they extended Spring integration to have a custom HL7 gateway, which is like amazing. They used a custom protocol adapter, right? They wrote their own.
It's not a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Really, it's one of my favorite parts of Spring integration. We have, a very good standard library full of adapters, but it's easy to extend it, right? You create your own message source or your own producer,
You don't need. You can develop in Podges.
In what?
In Podges. You can develop everything in Podges. Like same Chris Richardson wrote the book. Podges in action, remember? Yeah, and some of the basic and central concept of Spring integration is Podges communication. So you declared your bean as a service or whatever, just plain Podge object, and you have some methods to deal with, right? So you just need to say Spring integration what bean to use and what method to call. That's probably what you showed yesterday with service activator and similar annotations, right? So at the same time, there is annotation in bound channel adapter, call it, and you can feed Podge method.
I love it. Right? Very, very powerful. It's easy to extend Spring integration to do more than what is in the box. If you want to speak HLS7 or HL7 or AS2 or something like that, right?
Well, these days, ChatGPT is very popular. It's pretty easy, I guess, to write some channel adapter for ChatGPT to ask the question and get some reply.
Oh, that's pretty brilliant, actually. Okay, if somebody wants to work on that, connect us to the API. Oh, wow, I would use that. Imagine.
But there is just enough to write some Podge service with plain method to communicate with ChatGPT and feed it to Spring integration with even with service activator annotation, not just a part of handle in integration flow.
That'd be cool, though. Imagine like a gateway, a ChatGPT gateway. You send a prompt, and it sends you back.
Well, essentially, it's gateway, but gateway is a particular example of service activator. Service activator is a common concept to deal with Podge from messaging.
Right. I love that. That's
whatever some particular implementation of service activator is just specific implementation, nothing more.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great idea. I hope somebody will work on that. Maybe I could. Hey, another question for you. Can you talk about the line between batch and integration? How can we know when to use one or another?
Ooh, that's interesting question. Yeah, probably to use batch from those perspective where you definitely have batch concept where you deal with batch patterns.
Yeah.
That's where Spring Batch is useful. I cannot tell that you cannot implement messaging with batch. It's definitely possible, right? Because
Yeah.
you just implement some reader, writer, processor, and essentially this is messaging already.
There's a
At the
Kafka
same
item.
time, you can implement some batch processing with Spring integration, like you talked about dynamic integration flows in this,
Right.
right? So it's can be like a batch. There is slightly probably correlation between them and the replacement, but again, better to use specific tool for specific task.
Right. I agree. And there's even a project. Um, I think it's about, yeah, I did talk about that. I did talk about how it's the volume of the data. So I might use Spring integration to notice a new file, to respond to the event of a new file. And I use Spring
Okay.
batch to then process the file,
Yeah, give that file as an input to
a job.
batch job, right?
And there's even the Spring batch integration module, which
Yes,
is
yes, yeah, just kind of integration between Spring
the two.
Batch and Spring Integration. Yeah,
Exactly. It ships with a job launching message handler that you can use to kick off a Spring Batch job in response to a Spring integration message.
yeah. That's good point. You reminded me about that. What I wanted to talk, and you asked me privately, Apache Camel. In
Oh,
Spring Integration 6.0, we have channel adapter implementation to call Apache Camel route.
cool. So you can share. You can have Spring integration orchestrating.
Exactly, something like that. Yeah.
And that brings us to this. Well, first of all, this Sanjeev is amazing. It looks like he's doing really cool things. He moved a Mule application to Spring integration, which I love. And he says he's worked with Apache Camel, but he prefers Spring integration over Camel. And
Okay.
I mean, they're both nice technologies. I like Spring integration a little bit more because it fits more nicely with Spring.
Yeah, right. It's hard to not be biased, right?
Yeah, of course. I talked about that, and then exactly, and then Sanjeev says, yeah, you can use Spring integration to trigger the batch jobs. Absolutely.
Yeah, opposite. Yeah, opposite. You can call Spring Integration from batch tasklet, right? That's
Yeah,
called
exactly.
processor. Yeah.
And then we even talked about remote chunking in one of the earlier videos, where you use message channels with a batch job.
Clustering is a great subject, and we can talk about that forever.
Right.
Especially with messaging is pretty easy.
Now, somebody says, Johnny5GR says, my team is worried about switching to Spring integration. They think it'll be harder to handle error cases and concurrency. We have only one Kafka message to RabbitMQ flow. Is it worth it to switch? What do you think?
I don't see a problem. You just switch, you use Kafka message driven channel adapter as an input, then you do something with the message, like transforming, I don't know, handling, maybe somewhere storing in database and send it to RabbitMQ using IMQP outbound channel adapter.
Yep.
Simple. That's what we do with Spring integration.
I mean, you could
And
use
that's what we do even in Spring Cloud Stream with binders.
Yep.
Many people use concept like pulling data from one binder and pushing to another binder through multi-binder configuration in Spring
Right.
Cloud Stream. And yeah, underneath, under the cover, everything is based on Spring integration.
So I think actually your error handling and concurrency will be easier to understand if it's all Spring integration, because you have an error channel and it's very consistent. You can send a message to an error channel. Concurrency, there are well understood, like you said, you configure the task executor and so on for the context, and that gets
Better
used.
to do everything by default, I don't see any problem because Kafka message-driven channel adapter is asynchronous by default. It
Right.
spans consumers according to provided concurrency and available partitions on the topic, and every single partition is handled in a single thread to preserve
Right.
fidelity. So error handling is also can be injected to that inbound channel adapter in the beginning, and so on, so on. You also can handle errors by by service activator.
Right.
We have a couple special AOP advices to handle errors on specific spot. So
Yeah, should be fine. I think I think the code is cleaner this way. You have to define the inbound Kafka adapter, the outbound AMQP
yeah,
adapter. Everything else is just Spring integration. You get the same patterns,
right.
consistency, etc.
Yeah, only well, I see sometimes struggle from community here on Stack Overflow and GitHub that there is entry curve and no one wants to read such a huge book, right?
Right.
Yeah, because you need to get used to think in messaging and message channels and points and handlers in between
Right.
before to make something valuable from this messaging uh, communication messaging development style.
Right. It's a different way of thinking, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
a little bit.
But I think it's more valuable to think like this in the world of microservices. I thinking like messaging before was complicated and expensive. Today, it's the only way to build systems, I think, that you can guarantee will scale, and be robust. It just seems very natural. Okay, so speaking of scale, if I scale my application, how do I control the consumption of the same message? Spring Cloud Stream can handle it built in, right?
How to control consuming of same message.
Is that like if you get
I'm
multiple
not
messages?
sure how you. Well, it depends. If you publish to topic, of course, you're going to consume same message in every single instance of your scaled consumer, right? But if you use queue concept in between, then only single consumer can consume this message.
Right. And so that's like in Spring Cloud Stream, they have the groups, right? The consumer groups.
Yeah, that concept goes a bit out of Spring integration scope.
Right.
This is part of Apache Kafka and Amazon Kinesis.
Right. And we can fake it with RabbitMQ. It doesn't exist.
Fake it with RabbitMQ, yeah, it's also possible. We can fake it with whatever. But at the same time, if you cause it to publish the same message to different instances and you definitely would like to handle only once, we have implementation of idempotent receiver pattern. This iteration, yeah.
What does that look like? Is there a key that you have to filter?
This is just annotation, special annotation. You mark your service activator with that annotation. Yeah, idempotent receiver, it's called.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's really cool. So, do I have to create can I do that in the integration flow?
For integration flow, you need to use advice option and inject specific AOP idempotent receiver interceptor, probably. Yeah, I don't remember.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing. That's so cool. Yeah, that's very interesting. I was gonna say, usually people use something like
Right. So this is the way how we would handle that duplication problem, right? Which Chris Richardson also mentioned in the microservices book.
Right. That's amazing.
Idempotent receiver is a specific pattern from enterprise integration patterns, which fully applies to microservice patterns. Boom.
Very much. And you gotta building modern messaging systems. You start to learn that once and only once is a lie, right? That doesn't exist. You have to build for at least once. Okay, so what about this? Is Spring integration integrated with micrometer, metrics, and traces for observability support and troubleshooting?
Oh, the question is yes, it is.
Yeah.
In the previous current version 6.0, we spent like whole previous year when we developed this Spring framework 6th generation, right? And
Right.
observability from micrometer was spread and implemented in every single project in portfolio, including Spring integration, of course.
Yeah.
So we do observe message handlers, message channels, gateways, and inbound channel data.
Nice.
In the end, if you do provide trace, in the end you can build the whole trace propagation and see, for example, in Zipkin, right?
Right.
How your trace and spans connected together and whatever happened in
Does
your
it, so as long as I have a micrometer registry,
observation registry.
observation
Micrometer registry brings us only metrics.
Right.
With observation registry, we can have both.
And so if I have an observation registry, if I have the actuator, then I will have this, right?
Yes.
Spring Boot actuator. So
yeah, we don't do that by default. So you need to specify in auto configuration properties what Spring integration components you would like to observe.
Okay. And I remember I saw in the documentation, you can say I want to observe like asterisk all the Spring integration components.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, for convenient.
Very convenient. And then you can also specify a filter, a micrometer filter to reject certain components. Maybe you want all components except this one and this one. And so
okay, I'm not so good with micrometer API, but yeah, I heard that there is some filter to reject. Yeah.
So it's definitely there. It's definitely powerful.
Right, and thanks to common observation API and its implementation in every single portfolio project, we can have distributed trace,
right?
Like, the same microservices concept. So if you, for example, receive request from HTTP, which already has some trace, this trace is going to be restored in our application. Then we can send to Kafka, to RabbitMQ, save to database, and everything is covered under the same trace and observation.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Is it possible to intercept those that information from Spring integration? Can I is there like an observability inbound adapter where I can wiretap
data? That's an interesting idea. No, we don't have that. No, that's interesting. We need to work out what is that going to look. Yeah, I see your point.
I don't know. Maybe it could be. I don't know if people would need that.
One day.
Sanjeev says he thinks that observability is a standard thing to have these days, and I think absolutely, and it's out of the box.
Yeah, it comes out of the box. Yeah,
I think it's so, because remember Chris Richardson in that book, he also talks about the microservice chassis, right? The service.
Okay, yeah, I heard that. Yeah,
and that's another pattern. And basically that's Spring Boot. It's basically I have this business logic. Some things are repeated across all my business services. I have 10 different services. All of them need a web server. They need observability. They need logging, etc.
Okay, that sounds like service mesh.
Oh, well, each framework, each bit of code needs to handle this, right? This is not about tracing and all that. It's about I have a Java process or I have a Node.js or whatever. Each one will have to have these things. So you need a framework that wraps your business logic, and provides logging, and provides observability, and whatever. And so that's called the service chassis. And Spring Boot is a service chassis, right? It wraps your business logic and provides these runtime concerns, but they're there by default. You don't have to. You just add the actuator, and suddenly you get it. That's the important part. Is you get all these great convenient defaults out of the box. Oh, Sanjeev says he's now migrating to Spring Cloud Stream. Oh, very good. So we have lots of very interesting possibilities there.
Yeah,
You can still use Spring integration.
that's kind of the next level. Yeah,
Yeah,
how to abstract messaging outside of your function definition. You just
right.
write a function and you plug your application with specific binder implementation for messaging outside. Yeah, and that's it. Nothing more.
What is like? So Spring Integration 6 is the latest, right?
It's the latest, yes.
And what are some of the big new features? We talked about the observability stack, right?
Right.
The integration with the observation.
Observability, camel integration. What else? We spend a lot of time for A of T native support, right? Because we get rid of Spring native project and move everything to A of T API. And spread it through portfolio again. Yeah, that was huge chunk of work to deal with native images support, to get rid of reflection or exposing reflection hints, proxy hints. Yeah, that's another one.
I've tried the AOT support for a lot of different adapters, and most of them just work out of the box. Some, I've talked to you about this. Some it's not Spring integration; it's the projects on which Spring integration depends.
Right. Recently, I contributed to Rome tools, according to your ask.
Oh yeah,
native support for
nice.
That library. Yeah, now it works.
Oh, nice. Okay, I didn't even notice that. That's great. And then I also, I think we talked about MQTT. Remember the Apache?
MQTT, yes, that has to be implemented on Paham.
Did they fix it? Did they do it?
No, I didn't see activity on that.
I wonder. I don't know. It's been a while. We should check. But anyway, basically, even this, it's not such a big deal. But there are some things.
But good thing that we have some high-level API in Spring Framework, which let us to expose all those hints if they are not available in the target library.
I love that. Yeah, Spring Framework makes it easy for us to ship it.
Sure.
And as soon as they are provided by the library, we can throw away the code and still be backwards compatible. It's amazing. I also noticed one of the things that I loved in Spring Integration 6, and I did a video on this, is the Postgres channel.
Yes, that's a good one.
Can you talk about that? Like, what's the story behind all that?
What's the story behind? Community member reached me and asked about this support for notification listener integration with Postgres. Postgres has some built-in feature to notify and listen from database by itself. You just implement specific function or procedure in database as it is, and yet you just need to call those operations from your code, and it works. And voila. After some discussion, we ended up that it's probably better to implement as message channel.
Oh, nice.
Because we have some kind of message channel over database, and it is based on pooling, right? We use database, some specific database table to push messages there and serialize definitely. And on another side, we pull constantly that table for new messages. But with this Postgres specific channel implementation, we don't need to pull database. We just listen to notification and do something according to that notification. Essentially, we do select when we get notification, we do select from specific table. So
yeah. Very, very powerful. Especially for Postgres, right? Like there's
Postgres.
JDBC, and then there's a Postgres. We were talking about Apache Camel earlier. That's new, right? There's a new Apache Camel support in Spring Integration 6, right?
Yes.
So that's like if you want to, like you just said, you mentioned earlier, if somebody wants to send a message and kick off a route, there's a camel message handler, which I think is very powerful.
If, for example, we don't have some channel adapter implementation in Spring integration, I don't know which sample to give you from camel repository. I don't know. But yeah, if there is one in Apache Camel, just write some simple route in Apache Camel DSL and feed it to this dedicated Spring integration channel adapter for Apache Camel.
I love it. There's also RabbitMQ streams. So this is like Kafka streams. It's a database built in RabbitMQ that kind of like Kafka streams has a database as well, right? So there's RabbitMQ streams.
Yeah, it's not a database. It's like what is that log? It's called, right?
Yeah, a distributed log. Yeah,
just add data, and we never remove the data. Then we somewhere commit offset to be sure at what point we stop it to consume and be able to restore from that point. Yeah, so the concept of Rabbit streams is similar to what we have with Apache Kafka.
And so RabbitMQ, the Spring for RabbitMQ had the support a little while ago, and now we have it in Spring integration.
No, that was implemented in parallel.
Okay. But we have it now in Spring integration.
Gary Russell did that.
Huh?
Gary Russell did that.
Oh,
Gary Russell.
Spring integration team member Gary Russell, who we love. He worked on that, and then now it's in Spring integration. The RabbitMQ streams for certain use cases, and I don't know all of them offhand, but I remember seeing some information about it. It's like many times faster than regular RabbitMQ.
That's true. Yeah.
For use cases for which it's appropriate.
Yeah,
right?
we just discussed that with you because since we just opened messages to queue and we never removed them from there, so that's what gives us performance.
Amazing.
We don't do acknowledgement per message.
Yeah, really fast. So if you're looking for like if you're on RabbitMQ but you want like almost Kafka-like speed and performance, maybe you check out RabbitMQ.
That was it. Yeah.
What else? Oh, I see that you have moved from the JCraft, JSCH, the secure shell, the SSL library.
Okay. Apache Mina.
Yeah, you've moved to the SFTP module of Apache Mina, which is, I like the.
Okay, great. Yeah, I also like it because Apache Mina, especially the latest version, is fully based on Java 8 concept. It uses synchronous API and much convenient to use. It's much complicated, because some use cases kind of doesn't work. Like what is that called? Proxy SOX 4 proxy.
Right.
Yes. So that is not easy to configure and implement. I answered people that it's outside of Spring integration scope, but they still complain because it was easy to configure with previous library we supported.
Right.
And we need to look into that one day. But Apache Mina, they said that they don't have this out-of-the-box implementation yet, high-level implementation. They do have some low-level, but it is pretty hard and involving to wire it. The main reason to move to Apache Mina that there are some new encryption and decryption algorithms which are not supported with the JSCH. Yeah. Kind of that library doesn't support new SFTP servers.
And so this is what I love about Spring integration is with Spring integration, your code doesn't change, right?
No.
the
That's what
inbound
we have.
adapter still just gives me a file, right? And all the concepts are still the same, but you can change the whole engine underneath. We can change it in the framework,
Right.
and the user's
That's kind of
code
the
still.
point of the framework. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. You also mentioned, speaking of asynchronous, you mentioned I see that there's Kotlin coroutine support.
Oh, yes, that's a cool one. Yeah.
What does that mean? I didn't even notice this. This
With
is new to
that,
me.
the Kotlin language provides for us coroutines, kind of some simple, what is that, language primitives to make our code asynchronous. It, of course, underneath it's implemented and generated to some Java code and special structures. But from Kotlin perspective, it looks pretty easy. We just call it.
What? So you have a suspend fun. You have a
Suspend
suspendable
fun, yes.
on a service activator. Does that mean that when Spring integration calls that code, it doesn't block?
It does not block. No, it performs on that coroutine from Kotlin.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm just adding the suspend as long as what I am doing inside that function.
If you think from Java code perspective, you just make your return as a future, right?
Right.
Of the service activator. And if framework is smart enough that it knows what to do with that future, it performs this asynchronously. So exactly the same suspend function.
Okay. So this is I didn't even know that you could do that. That was something I showed the service activator yesterday with an at service activator annotation on a method, and the method takes a payload and it returns a value. What you're saying now is, first of all, if you're using Java, you can return a future. Can you return a completable future?
Completable future.
Yep.
It has to be completable future. Right. And mono. You also can do mono.
Like a reactive type.
Right. And that is also going to be asynchronous.
Nice.
Performance on demand.
Somebody also asked, can Spring integration be used with reactor operators API to support things like back pressure on channels, on channel communication level?
Yeah, that's what we do. If on the high level perspective, we have Flux message channel implementation. It is fully reactive from both sides.
So
yeah, that's how we do it. And at the same time, if you think about combining API, yeah, we do provide some high-level API to deal with reactive publisher.
Right.
On one side or another side. We even can make the whole integration flow as reactive publisher.
Yeah. So you can, instead of using the integration flow .get, I think you can say to publisher.
To reactive publisher.
Yeah. And that's
so even start flow with from reactive publisher. And we also have some channel adapters which are fully reactive, like a socket or web flux.
Nice. So that's amazing. Yeah, this new release is it's huge. And you mentioned the AOT stuff. To me, that was the thing I was waiting for, right? Huge, big changes, but there's so much great small stuff. What is repeatable? At repeatable.
Repeatable. Oh, that's Java from Java 8. We probably repeatable annotation.
Oh, the annotation.
Yes, that's for annotations, right? So
okay,
essentially the same, you mentioned the same service activator, and you probably would have some use case where you'd like to have the same podger, but listen for messages from different message channels. So there is no way to specify which several input channels for single service activator, but there is a way to say several service activators that they're going to use this podger method. So you kind of just repeat service activator annotation on the same podger method.
Nice.
With XML, it was pretty easy. We just declare several service activator components and refer them to the same podger method. With Java DSL, you just use handle on different subscribers.
Right.
But the point of this repeatable was exactly about annotations. And, we just follow consistency with Spring Framework.
Speaking of consistency, I noticed that we've removed Spring Integration RMI, which makes sense, right? Because RMI is,
It's dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous. You shouldn't be using it. It does all sorts of, it uses serialization, which is also dangerous, right? Java serialization sidesteps the entire sandbox of Java, so not good. So that's gone. And now obviously there's a million other ways people can solve the same problem. You can use
whatever RPC you would like to choose.
Let's see here. You got rid of the Apache. No, you got rid of the Gemfire module, right? Okay, that's
because it was moved from outside of Spring portfolio.
Right. Let's see. JMS security.
It's not removed. We moved it to Spring Integration Extensions project, and
if it's still there.
Still need to use Gemfire, you can take it from there.
Oh wow, there's so much stuff here. So authorization channel interceptor, what is this? So Spring security, so that's another thing when you talk about messaging.
Yes, that's also right. That's talking about consistency. I'm pushing for this kind of for half a year already. We have in Spring security some security around messaging,
right?
Because one day many years ago, we pushed some general messaging concept from Spring integration to Spring messaging model.
Right.
Like message channel, message by itself, message headers, message handlers the same, and channel interceptor as well.
For Spring Integration 4. Yeah.
Yes, for Spring Integration 4 and Spring Framework 4. That was, many years ago. And around the time, also realized that there has to be some security with messaging. So we have dedicated model in Spring Security for securing messaging. But I would say it's not full. And we still had before today some general concept for securing message channels in Spring Integration. And my idea move this API back to Spring Security as it is.
Wow, that's awesome. So it's more consistency.
That's my point. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, well, I'm all about Spring Integration 6.0. I've already been using some of it. What else do people need to know? What are some of the, if you have one more thing to tell us about, what's the one thing that you think people should try out tomorrow that might change, might give them a smile?
Well, just try whatever this new is going to happen after our discussion with Josh, because his feedback is just amazing. I'm very sorry for those broken demos, which doesn't work by default, but I hope after the fix we will merge today and release tomorrow, it is going to work by default.
Amazing.
That's kind of serious.
I love it. Kharkiv, that's amazing. Thank you for joining us so far away. Well, I mean, you're not that far away, actually.
Wow. Привет.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you're
yeah, I am from Kharkiv by myself.
Yeah. Amazing. Small world. I hope everybody's okay. Well, my friend, this has been so cool. It's just been, Spring Integration is so useful now. It's more useful than when it first started, and that's what I think people don't understand, is that messaging is just, it's more valuable today than it was 20 years ago, right? And
Yeah, I also think so. Yeah.
and now it's also paradoxically very weird, very odd. It's also more open source, more free, right? Like more approachable, right? Than it was 20 years ago. And so you have more need, but also more availability, more supply and more demand. And I think Spring integration is just so valuable in this world where, there's a lot of ways to do it, but this is one of the best.
Yeah, and Josh, sorry, I showing books too much. I have another book to share. I'm looking into these streaming systems to implement some stuff in Spring integration, like watermarks. Together with Christian Zolov, Christian Zolov joined it recently team, and we look into some cool new stuff which we may implement eventually.
Christian Zolov, he's been on the show. He's been on this podcast as well. This is your second time on the show, right? You've been on the show before, but so this is a podcast interview, but we're doing it now live on my YouTube channel. But before, you were on the show before, I think, right?
No, you mistaken. No.
Oh, my brain is not so good. I'm sorry. I thought
no, that's first time. Thank you for having me. That's first time.
Well, that's terrible. Wait, it's your first time? That's terrible. Terrible for me. I'm an idiot. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Well, because we've had like more than we're close to like 250 guests or so, something like that, right? A lot of like every week for years and years now. I've had guests, so I could have sworn you've been on this show. That's stupid of me. I'm so sorry. But I'm glad you're here. We fixed it. I fixed the bug.
That's good.
So I put the book, by the way. I put the book here, streaming systems. Here, there you go. It's on the screen. So if people want to check that out, that's a good book as well. I really appreciate you taking the time, my friend. I think I learned a lot. I hope people did as well about this stuff, the technology. Can you tell us you joined the Spring integration team? When did you join the Spring integration team? Let me just figure that out first.
2013, like 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago.
Wow, that went by so quick. And then, so you were a contributor in Ukraine first. You were just working in the open source. And I remember you were answering questions and just being very useful, very helpful in the community. How did you eventually join the team? Going from outside to inside? Because I think people have this question, how do we get here?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's easy. One man hired, another fired, another one man hired.
Okay.
Yeah. It happened that Oleg Zhurakovsky, who helped me a lot with outside contribution, we worked together. He's also from Ukraine, and he worked on Spring integration. Yeah, it happened that he left Spring Source back in days, and he just recommended me to Mark Fisher, and that's how it happened.
Yeah,
I don't know. It was so small community back in days, even with GitHub as a platform for contribution, it still was small community. So there was an opportunity, and Mark Fisher gave me some offer, and I'm here, still with you, still loving messaging.
I love it. You talked about the size of the community. Like when you were working with Spring, were you working with Spring integration in your previous job?
I did. Cool. Yeah, I did work. As I said, first I met Spring integration first time when I needed FTP support.
Right.
Then eventually I worked it out. Back in those days, it was, what is it called? SOA, right? Service-oriented architecture, right? When we did a lot of web services with SOAP, XML here, there, XSL10 between. So then, Arjen Prutzma contributed web services channel adapters back to Spring integration those days, and that was very useful for me. So when we get files from FTP, transform them to something valuable, and then send to web services which were consumed somewhere else, it was fully on Spring integration. That was pretty cool.
Very, very powerful.
Even if that looked for my boss, that looked very weird. What? You even code now in XML? Not only we develop protocol between services we saw, but also in XML, the code by itself. Because back in days it was very hard to do something with Java. We didn't have any annotations and lambdas like these days. So XML was much easier to configure beans for Spring and declare dependencies between them. And even in the end, we did develop messaging with XML.
Yeah. I remember and there was even design time tooling in Spring Tool Suite. You could, what you see is what you get.
It was limited, right, for one single configuration file.
Right.
It was limited but eventually when our project becomes bigger and bigger, even if it is microservice, we still may have some configuration for different aspects of this service, and the configuration is distributed. That tool has gone.
Every time I think about whenever I use Spring integration today, by default, I use integration flow, right? Integration flow that's something you created, right?
The
DSL.
DSL, yeah.
So what made you think of this? Like, why? Because it's beautiful. I love it. I use it all the time. But why did you? It was one of the first things you did. I remember in the first few years, one of the big changes that was I saw you working on all the time was this integration flow DSL, the Java DSL, right?
Yeah. But in those days, we already had annotations in Java, right? And Chris Beams, we mentioned it several times, implemented DSL on annotations for Spring Framework configuration instead of XML, right?
Right.
In these days. Maybe in XML configuration for Spring integration, there is chain.
Right.
And call it chains, where you can group several handlers in one single unit of work or logical block.
Right.
So an idea of integration flow came from there, And at the same time, Apache Camel had already back in days Java DSL. It was pretty simple to transform and so on. And idea took from there because, at least for me, nothing appear from something empty. I always use some idea from somewhere else and try to adapt it.
Right.
That's how it appeared. At the same time, that was 2014 or 15. Java 8 was on the radar, right? Or not around the corner with its Lambda support.
Right.
That was pretty good fit to our Java DSL implementation, because before that we needed to do definitely new some class and have its implementation internally or extract that class. We still can do these days, but Lambda support was pretty good fit and addition to make this happen. The level API.
I mean, you make it sound like it just wrote itself. I've seen the code for the DSL, and it takes a master programmer, somebody who really understands Java generics and all that to write that. That what you did is amazing. It's an amazing piece of code. It's not just because Java had lambdas. Even with the lambdas, there was still a lot of work to be done. And
the common pattern is builder. It's easy. You need to have methods chain to be able to configure everything together with a single code flow.
I love it. And
You also have DSL for Kotlin. I don't know if you use it in some of your demos. There's dedicated Kotlin style DSL. And we also have Groovy. I'm not sure if someone uses Groovy, but I love Groovy. Back in my days, that was great addition to projects as dynamic language. So I still love Groovy. I decided to implement dedicated DSL for spring integration in Groovy.
Right.
It's probably also included in 6.0. No, I didn't mention that.
I didn't think so. Let me interrupt quick. You mentioned Kotlin. I did a video on Kotlin. I did a Let's Code series.
Yeah.
Ago. I took the code that we did on one of the wrap-ups where we looked at DSLs, and I took that and turned it into a blog here on the Spring blog.
I saw it, yeah.
And that blog, I show the Spring integration flow DSL, right? So if you want to, and there's other DSLs. Kotlin has great DSLs all around the Spring ecosystem, but there's an integration flow example.
Another consistency and teamwork.
The what?
Another consistency and teamwork.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Let's see here. Somebody, very good point. I have worked with all the different flavors of configuration, but the DSL is the best. I love the DSL too, man. It's really, really well done. Amazing.
Thank you.
Big fan. Okay, so you said there's Groovy support. Is that a new thing in 6? Oh, there's the Truffle scripting engine.
Oh, scripting. Yes, that comes from GraalVM by itself.
Right.
Since some version, I probably mentioned that in documentation, Java removed Nashorn, right? Or Nashorn, right? For JavaScript. But community still asks to be able to write some scripting in JavaScript as a part of integration flow. Yeah, so we have a dedicated channel adapter. It's essentially service activator, which can perform dynamic language at runtime. And that script can be reconfigured to something else at runtime as well. Yeah, at some point they removed JavaScript from Java by itself, and GraalVM bring that back for us, but in much better performance
and more support for new syntax.
I have no idea what is that, but yeah, probably. And there is idea to implement all other GraalVM languages as in Spring integration. Yeah,
I can't wait.
We do support Python and Ruby these days.
Python.
We have Python support, script support, but that is pretty old version of Python. Because
is that Dave Taransky's contribution?
Yes.
Okay. I remember this. Oh, I thought that was part of a data flow. I didn't realize that came in Spring.
Yeah, we're doing data flow as well.
Oh, wow.
This is good addition because you just need to write a script and feed it to your stream definition, and that's it. Everything works.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Underneath it is implemented with Spring integration.
So now you could write, it's very possible now to just write a bunch of methods with annotations and write some scripting code and have a complex integration flow. Or you could use the DSL and have some, it's like the actual code that people need to write to do something useful is so little for your common situation, for your common, move this data from that to this or whatever. It's just amazing. What about the Spring expression language, right? That's used all over the place in Spring integration.
We do use it everywhere, yeah.
Yeah.
Just because in messaging, we have a context, which is message by itself, and that message may dictate us what we need to do and what data has to be used. And spell expression language let us to take that information from message from headers, for example, or do some JSON pass expression evaluation against the payload.
And Andy Clement was on the podcast some time ago, maybe half a year or a year, and we were talking to him about this, and he said that the support for compiling Spring expression languages,
Right.
expression statements, came from a use case in Spring integration, right?
Yes, Josh. Yes. We did push for that one because some customer, the pivotal customer, also asked us about good performance of Spring integration. They use it spell expressions heavily, and their concern was that it is pretty slow, just because underneath spell language relies on reflection to parse and call particular methods.
Right.
But with this built-in compilation for spell, we do generate classes on the fly, and we compile them and feed them to the final expression. Therefore, there is no reflection at runtime audio when it
Amazing.
performs. Yeah.
It's amazing. Really, really fast too,
It is limited though, but still useful, because if you, our typical answer to Stack Overflow questions like this, if your expression became too complex, just push it to some Java method and call that method from this.
Yeah, Lambda. Yeah, it's fine. But I just love that because again, it's one of those things where Spring integration sits on top of Spring and Spring Boot, or it leverages all this stuff, and that makes it. Spring integration isn't just Spring integration. Spring integration is Spring Framework, and it's Spring Boot. It's the rest of the ecosystem, That's why I think Spring integration is so magical, so powerful. It just feels very naturally integrated into everything. Wow. Okay, so somebody mentioned we've had scripting support in Spring Framework since 2007, 2008, that sounds about right. That was 3.0, I guess. We had the support in Spring Framework for Groovy Beans and what else? Groovy and
there was dedicated Groovy DSL to provide configuration, but probably it works the same way these days. No, it's underneath, it reflects to XML configuration.
Okay. I'm talking about Spring Framework itself.
In Spring Framework itself, that's what.
Yeah. I know what this person is, Ruby and Groovy, but I'm trying to remember what that support was, because I haven't used it. Groovy and why did we? I think we introduced it to support some use case in Grails at the time. I don't remember.
Grails.
I don't remember. It's been
that
too
was
many years.
So long time ago.
Yeah. Dynamic language support, Spring 2.0. That's what it was. So JRuby, Groovy, and Bean Shell.
Bean Shell. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the one. And so
we kind of talk about similar things, whatever. Yeah, there is some factory in Spring Framework to be able to take some scripting language and perform it at runtime, and something similar we do in Spring integration, but as a channel adapter.
Exactly. Very, very powerful. Okay. I mean, I think Spring integration is just in a really good place. Can you tell us what's coming next, or should we just wait? What's the new stuff coming in Spring integration?
We need to look into virtual threads. As we realize it with you that we use a lot of threading in our applications, and we need to deal somehow with that. So, yeah, probably we need to revise and understand how we can leverage virtual threads from Loom and provide some high-level configuration for end user, or even fix something internally in the framework. Because even if we try to take managed thread pools, external thread pools from high configuration like Spring Framework, but I believe we have a couple places in Spring integration where we just create threads ourselves.
Right. It'd be nice to centralize that.
That's what needs to be revised for Loom.
Right.
That's upcoming. Another subject upcoming, we probably also heard about that is crack. What is that? Correlated? No.
Checkpoint. No, it's
Checkpoint. Restore at checkpoint, right? Coordinated restore at checkpoint. Yeah. We also need to be able to, as a whole sprint project, to save some checkpoint and be able to restore from that checkpoint. Probably this is going to affect somehow our source code internally.
right.
It's maybe not so exciting feature for end users, right? Because it's not going to be some high-level component from sprint iteration API perspective, but that's something what
Right.
we're going to do internally.
Well, it is kind of interesting though. I mean, I've seen some demos with Crack, and it is so fast. It is so fast. You know, it's imagine a Spring integration application starting up in a millisecond, 1 millisecond. You know, like I can imagine that now. It's with Crack, it's possible. You know, if we did some work to make it.
But
possible.
I heard it works only on Linux these days, right?
That's everybody's using Linux in
Java
production.
implementation.
Yeah, like Linux is production. I don't know anybody going to production on. I'm sure there are some people using Windows or maybe even Mac, but you know, like GraalVM and Crack are two. Oh my God, you know, amazing opportunities for Java developers today to increase their startup time and memory footprint. Crack doesn't really help with the memory footprint. GraalVM does, right? GraalVM reduces the memory footprint, but startup time. Wow. Yeah, that's. Imagine. I mean, right now you can create integration flows on demand, right, with integration flow context. But with Crack, it's so fast. You might just create a whole new JVM. You know, you could just imagine Spring Cloud Data Flow. Creating new JVMs takes like a couple milliseconds, you know, to get something up and running and responding to traffic, and then you can tear it down. Oh,
that would be cool.
Amazing.
Yeah,
all right,
that's
my
the
friend.
subject we're going to look.
Yeah, Spring. So that's the future, and that's coming. You know, not right now, but it's coming in the next few years. I think all this stuff is going to be very, very, very central to a lot of the ways we talk about Java. Where are you on the internet? And if so, where can people find you? And you know, do you want to be found? And if so, where can
Twitter
people?
on Stack Overflow. Yeah. Gitter. I'm also there.
Can I share your Twitter?
You can. Thank you. Yeah, you can share my Twitter on Facebook.
I love that you mentioned the Stack Overflow because I don't think people. So one of the things that I love about the Spring team is even though we have all these amazing engineers that are doing amazing things and delivering features that help millions of people all around the world, they also take those same people are also the ones on Stack Overflow and on GitHub, you know, answering questions and trying to help and all that. And it just,
that's kind of good communication with community, and it is a great way to get feedback. It's
right.
Just also don't hesitate to ask questions on Stack Overflow and share your concern. If you don't like something, just share that as a concern, and we may turn it to GitHub issue and fix it at the bug.
And I just saw speaking of virtual threads, by the way, Jürgen, just earlier today in the morning while I was asleep, he
mentioned it.
Yeah, they're considering a JDK 21 integration into Spring Framework 6.1. So
yes, 6.1. Yeah, so that's upcoming major minor release this fall, right? It's going to be this fall. That's for Spring Boot 3.2. Yeah, and right. According to Jürgen, we're going to adopt virtual threads.
Yeah.
Because GVM is making that, right?
Sorry?
GVM is releasing that in 2021.
6 months. It would be absolutely amazing. All right, my friend. Thank you very, very much for taking the time today.
That was great. It's great communication. Yeah, I like to see all this stuff doing a community, and it is great to see someone communicating back to you. That's kind of great too.
Thank you, my friend. I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you again.